Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Gananaam tva ganapati gum havamahe kavim kavinam upamashravastamam jyeshtarajam brahmanam brahmanaspata anashranvannotibhih sidasadanam. Shri Mahaganadhipataye Namaha. Namaste. We looked at the second verse last time. Sadhana chatushtaya sampanna adhikarinam moksha sadhana bhutam tattva viveka prakaram vakshyamaha. So the teacher says that he is going to explain tattva viveka prakaram. Tattva viveka prakaram means the method of revealing the self or conducting the inquiry of the self. So that he's going to explain that to the people who have sadhana chatushtaya. Sadhana chatushtaya means the fourfold qualifications. Okay, and whoever has that will be able to gain the knowledge of the self by following the teacher's words. And so that's what he's going to say here. And so he uses the word vakshyamaha, which is plural. And I think I already talked about that in the last class. The plural is used because it is not one person's idea. It is coming from the knowledge of saints and sages, a galaxy of saints and sages. So it's been passed down from generation to generation. And so to remind oneself, the teacher reminds himself that this is not my knowledge. It is important to do that because humility, I told you, is very important in the last class. So because it's coming from that place, and it will not be truthful also. If I say this is my knowledge and I'm going to share it with you, it will not be truthful. It is not my knowledge. This is something that has been discovered from rishis. So, and then it has been passed down from generation to generation. And so the plural is used for that matter also. But in this text is authored only by one person, but he uses the plural because of humility and also to make it clear that this knowledge is coming from many, many, many rishis. Okay? So then let's go to the next verse. Before I go to the next verse, I need to tell you one more thing. This text is in the form of a dialogue between the teacher and the student. Most texts are like that because the knowledge is not gained by reading a book. It is imparted by a teacher, one teacher to another student. It's always like that. Because I told you it's like showing a mirror, right? So because you cannot look at your own eyes, you need somebody to show it to you. So so most of the texts, there will be one or so, sometimes many students will be there. And they will ask questions and the teacher will answer them. That's how it is set up. So this text is also like that. So there's a student, at least one student, and that student is asking the question, sadhana chatushtayam kim. So the teacher said something. Now he looks at the words that the teacher used, and then all the words that he did not understand, he's going to ask the teacher. That's how this book is written all the way through, okay? So the teacher said, sadhana chatushtaya sampannaha. So then I need to know, so he said you should have certain qualifications. So then I must, if I suppose I'm a student, I need to know what qualifications they are so that I can see if I have those qualifications, right? So for that sake, the student is asking sadhana chatushtayam kim, what are these four qualifications? And then the teacher answers, nitya nitya vastu vivekaha, he says. Okay, then he says, nitya anitya vastu vivekaha. These are the words in that line. Nitya is that which is permanent. Anitya is that which is not permanent. Okay, and then you should have the discrimination between the two. Okay, and then I think he'll go into detail later, but this is the general meaning of it. So the one who possesses the difference, the clear division or difference between that which is permanent versus that which is not permanent. Okay, so that is one part of the qualification required. Another is iha mutrartha phala bhoga viragaha. So then there are benefits of doing actions, performing actions in this world, right? And then there are actions of the other world. So it's believed that there are many heavens. So this is the first heaven that we are in. This bhuloka, or this the earth that we are in, is the first heaven, and then there are many above it. Okay, so what is so there are many desires that we may have for in this, that we want to accomplish in this life, right? In this realm, but then there may be other desires for the higher worlds as well. So then what we need is phala. Phala means the result of actions. So you have to collect a lot of merit, and then that's what becomes another world, or this world, a result of see how is the result experienced by you? It is by finding yourself in a certain situation. So you find yourself in a situation and you have an experience. This experience is because of the merit or demerit that you collected earlier. Okay, that's how the phala works. Phala literally means fruit. Okay, and it is aptly named fruit because this is the result of an action. The fruit is that comes out of a tree. Similarly, you perform an action, and what comes out of it is the phala, the fruit of action, and the result of that action. And the fruit is perishable. It's always perishable, and therefore the fruit of an action is also perishable. Therefore, it is aptly named as phala. Okay, so we should be able to give up the results of actions of this world and the results of action which will give you other worlds. So there are things, so if you gain some merits, let me explain it this way. Suppose you gain some merit, then you will get certain benefits in this lifetime itself. So you'll be able to enjoy that fruit of action in this lifetime itself. Okay. So, but then there are certain other fruits of action which you will not be able to experience in this realm. You'll have to travel to another world and experience it. So sometimes what people do is they don't want anything from this world. They want just the barest minimum possible, like for food, clothing, and shelter. That's it. The rest of all that merit they want to save so that they can go to a higher world next time around. So they are willing to postpone their happiness in this world so that they can have much better happiness in the next world. That's what they're looking for. It's like, see, when we earn money, we get a paycheck. What we do is we take a chunk of that and save it. Not all of us, but some of us have this habit of taking a chunk of that and put it in the savings first, and then you take the rest and you spend it and you manage with it for the rest of the month, right, until the next paycheck. Why do we do that? Why do we put a chunk aside and then we're only because what we're doing is we don't want to enjoy all of it right now. I want to keep some for the future. I want to save up and make a bigger chunk so that I can have a better enjoyment in the future. That's why you would save, right? Why else would you save? There's no other reason to save unless saving itself gives you some sort of a pleasure, which is there in a lot of people, miserly, thinking people. The saving itself is the enjoyment for them. Means that gives them some kind of a pleasure. So they look at this bank balance every month. It is growing every month now, right? So they look at it. Just by looking at it, they're happy. They don't need to spend it. They don't need to have any pleasure out of it. But just by looking at it, they're happy. That's kind of silly, actually, if you ask me. Because if you keep saving and you're not spending any of it, then who will get to spend it? It might be your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law who will be spending it after you're gone. So what's the? I mean, you can do that, of course. You should do that, but if you have worked so hard for something, then you might as well enjoy it, right? That would be the attitude. If you can't enjoy all of it, share it with other people. Why accumulate, right? You just share it. If you have like excess, which you don't think you're going to use right now, then give it to your neighbor or somebody who's suffering, right? That can be done. So, but then that kind of thinking will not be there. They'll save it. So that's what these people do. What they do is they save up their merits, and then they want to have a better world next time around so that they can have better enjoyments. Okay, so he's referring to somebody who is willing to give that up. Okay, ihamutra phala bhoga viragha. So this world and also other worlds, all of them he has to be able to give up. So this is the qualification required for a student. Okay? But then don't be afraid. You don't have to have all of these qualifications in full measure. It is not possible. When you're just beginning to study Vedanta, it's not possible to have all of these qualifications in full measure. It's not possible. But we have to be aware of these qualifications and see if we have some of them in some measure or the other. It's okay. And then we try to improve upon it. And as even we improve upon it, then that itself is moksha. There is nothing other than that. As even you gain these qualifications, you get liberated. That's how it works, okay? So then, the third qualification he mentions is Shamadi Shatka Sampattihi. So there are sixfold qualities of the mind that you need to acquire. That is one of the qualifications required for gaining the knowledge of the self, okay? And then the last one is Mumukshutvam cha iti. So what are these sixfold qualities of the mind? He will describe it. The student will ask and the teacher will explain. For now, just understand that there are sixfold qualities of the mind, which is very, very important to acquire in order to gain the knowledge of the self. Then the fourth one is Mumukshutvam cha iti. Mumukshutvam is a deep longing to know the self. It is extremely important to have this. This is very, very, very important to have. Because, like I was telling you the other day, that suppose you're trying to change the mind of somebody. You cannot change his mind unless he wants his mind to be changed, right? So same thing applies here. Somebody wants to gain the knowledge of the self. They want to have that longing to know the self. Otherwise, no matter what the teacher says, it'll just go over the head. It's not going to be of any use, okay? So that is an important qualification required. The student sitting in front must have the longing. So it's also described in certain places. What kind of longing is this? The longing is compared to a person who's drowning. So you think about that person who's drowning. What would he be longing for? He would be longing for a breath of air, right? He wouldn't be thinking about anything else. He would not be thinking about food or drink or anything like that. He'd be like drinking a lot of water. But then his longing would be to take a fresh breath of air. That's how that longing should be. So my longing is so deep that I will not stop until I've known myself. That kind of a desire. That is a fourth qualification that the teacher is talking about. And then let's go to the next verse. The student is asking the question, Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha Kaha. So the teacher he gave 4 qualifications. The first line is what is asking here now. He wants more clarification. So what is that which is permanent and what is that which is not permanent? Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. What is it? What is that discrimination that I need between that which is permanent and that which is not? And please explain that. So that's the question of the student. And the teacher says, Nitya Vastvekam Brahma Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam Ayameva Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. So he says there is one thing, Ekam Brahma. There is one thing called Brahma. That is the only thing that is Nityam, which is timeless or permanent. Okay? And everything else, Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam. Sarvam means everything. Other than that is Anityam, is not permanent, okay, or real, or which is not time bound. Okay, we can take it all of those meanings for that. So Nityam is that which is beyond time. This is important to understand because anything that is time, that's when the limits of time will perish, okay, because it's bound by time. There's nothing in the creation that is timeless, okay, and what means If it is bound by time means it will perish eventually. So it has a beginning and it is sustained for a while and then it will perish. The entire creation is like that. It is created, okay, and then it is sustained and it is annihilated. So the whole everything will disappear at one time because it perishes. And then there's only one thing that is imperishable, that because it is beyond time. If that was also within the limits of time, that will also perish, right? So the one thing that is permanent will never perish because it is timeless. Okay, it's not bound by time. In fact, the time itself arises out of this, that which is permanent. It is sustained by that which is permanent, and it annihilates, it resolves into that which is permanent. That's how it is. Time itself is like that, and space is also like that. Time, if you take time, you should also bring in space. And space is the same thing. So this is the only thing that is not bound by time and space is Brahma. He gives it a name, Brahma. Okay. Now, the name Brahma, the name itself can bind it, right? Because you give it a name, then that has a particular name. All the other names that are now other than this Brahma. Then how can it be the one that transcends everything? That kind of a question might arise. Brahma is not a name. Okay, the meaning Brahma is the biggest thing there is, or you can say the other immediately after that the other name comes is Anoraniyan, Mahato Mahiyan from. This comes from Kathopanishad, an Upanishad called Kathopanishad, where the biggest, when you look at the big picture, when you look at the entire universe, what is that which is the biggest? Biggest means what? That pervades everything, that it contains everything. So there's something that we can fathom. Brahma is something that we cannot fathom. But there's one thing that we can fathom which contains everything in this creation. What is that? It is space. Space is one thing that we know of, we experience it, and we know that it contains everything. Okay? Now, Brahma is that which contains space, which is bigger than space, right? It pervades more than space itself. Because space itself is contained in Brahma. Okay? So, that way you have to look at it. And so that is there can only be one thing. How many kinds of space is there? If you ask, that's ridiculous, that's a stupid question, because there's only one space, right, that envelopes everything. So that which envelopes even the space can only be one. That's the Brahma we're referring to, okay? Because, and then let's look at it some more. There's space. And we know that space, right? You know space, right? Don't you know space? Yes, you do know space. How do you know that? Because it is in your consciousness, right? So your consciousness is now pervading the entire space. It doesn't matter how big it is. The space is vast. It's limitless. You don't know where it begins, where it ends. If at all it ends, you don't know. It is infinite, right? So, but then it is you can fathom that. You're able to fathom that because it is in your consciousness. You can think of this and say, hey, there's the space. So now tell me, which is bigger, the space or the one who knows space? If you think about it, you have to say it's the one who knows space is bigger, is the biggest. Because you are able to fathom that. That means you're enveloping space itself. And you're aware, it is in your awareness. Therefore, you, the awareful being, is bigger than space itself. That's how you have to understand it, okay? So now, which is bigger, is the space or yourself? Because now it is you who's able to fathom everything. So it is you who's bigger. If you ask, you are. This is how we arrive at the truth, okay? And this is the only thing that is permanent. Because everything else that's moving is there in this motionless background, which is your own awareness. Okay? So this is called Brahma, and that is the only thing that is real in this creation. We'll look at the details. We'll be talking about it in detail more as the student will keep asking questions, and we'll look at the answers. Tattvyatiriktam sarvam anityam. So now what is impermanent, or what is perishable? What is time-bound? Everything else. You don't have to name it. You can't name it because there are so many things in this creation. You cannot possibly name every single one of them. But if you say all, it includes everything. Sarvam, he said, and that was it. It was enough to use that word and just let it go. Okay? And this is called, and being able to clearly see what is real and what is not real. You should be able to clearly discriminate what is real from what is unreal. To be able to do that, that is the qualification. Okay? That is called the nitya vastu vivekaha. That is the discriminating ability the teacher is talking about. Okay? And then we'll go to the next verse. The verses are not numbered here. So I can probably tell you the page number, but then again you have to have the book with you to be able to know which page. So just flip through the book and you'll be able to see it. Viragaha kaha. So this was the second qualification that the teacher mentioned in the original original verse where he tells the fourfold qualifications. The second one is viragaha kaha. So iha sarva bhogeshu cha ichha rahityam. So viragaha means dispassion. Okay? What is dispassion, or what is renunciation? Renunciation is also, you can translate it like that also. So what is renunciation? He says, everything in this world, all the worldly pleasures and heavenly pleasures, you should be able to give up. So complete desirelessness. Okay. Again, don't be afraid. I told you, to be a qualified student, you don't have to have all of these qualifications in full measure. It's not possible because you haven't even begun to know what all of these things are, right? You're just starting to know. So just if you have it in certain measures, that would do. And we have to work on it to improve it. See, why do we entertain worldly pleasures? Because we attach a certain value to it, right? We attach certain value to these things, and we think that we're getting a pleasure out of it. That's why we go after it. We go after worldly things because we think that when we so when the seeker and the sought come together, we experience pleasure, and that pleasure we give importance to, and we think that is real. This is the reason we go right after the things of the world. So what if you found out for sure that the pleasure is not there in any objects of this world? Suppose you came to know clearly that the pleasure is not there. You are experiencing it, but it is not coming from the object of the world. Suppose you know this very, very clearly, and you know the very source of all happiness, okay? Then is there a need to go after these fleeting pleasures here and there? There is absolutely no need, right? If you think about it. So then what happens is when you out of knowledge that there is no happiness in any of these things of the world, then the viraga or the dispassion for these things will fall off naturally. It just falls off. Okay? So that's how you should understand it. Suppose we know very, very clearly that there is no pleasure in any of these objects of the world, and that the joy that is experienced is, the joy that is experienced is coming from within. It is your own joy that you're experiencing. If you know that very, very clearly, then there is no need for you to go out and look at the objects of the world. And it is a struggle, when we go seeking objects of the world for pleasure, it is a huge struggle. And do we get them all the time? We don't, right? I mean, even if we do get those things, the pleasure is experienced only for a few moments, right? It is said that if you acquire some object of your desire, if you acquire it, it is said that, you know how long your pleasure derived from that lasts? It said that is less than 3 minutes. It's really less than 3 minutes. You just imagine that it is more, but the first 3 minutes is when you're really enjoying that. that union, okay, between whatever you were seeking so desperately, and then it finally comes to you. So why 3 minutes? Because those 3 minutes is when you're not entertaining any new desires. So those 3 minutes, you're actually desireless. So now what is the real cause of your happiness? If you think about it, it is desirelessness. It is not something that you acquired. It's not your union with whatever it is that you're seeking until now. It is not. The real happiness is coming from desirelessness, because of those 3 minutes, you're not entertaining any other desires. But what happens after the 3 minutes is you start entertaining other desires. Then this happiness that you derived from acquiring a certain object will keep coming and going. So every time you go to the garage and look at your new car, you will experience that joy. But it is not the same as the first 3 minutes. It would have reduced. This is called the law of diminishing returns, right? So you look at it, it would have gone down a little bit, and then you go the next day or the next week after, a little, you feel happy, but it's getting lower and lower. A year later, forget it. It's almost completely gone.